In the deserts of Sudan, in the gardens of Japan, from Milan to Yucatan, every woman, every man, hit me, hit me, hit me with your rhythm stick.
Yes.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are now floating in Screamacelica. My name's Kevin Graham, and his name is Russell Boyce. No Marlene for Only Fools and Horses or Bet Gilroy, but it's Russell Boyce. Russell, how are you doing tonight?
Oh, you know how to set up a show, Kev, my man.
I've been thinking about that for days.
I knew straight away the first line. I thought, I know exactly what song that is. Definitely, that's a belter. So I actually prefer that one to the Beatles one last week. Do you know that? I think that's actually better lyrics.
The Beatle ones are a bit psychedelic, hippy trippy type thing, a bit gobbledygook. But Ian Dury, genius, another one of the genius, and we're going to talk about lyrical geniuses later on.
We are.
When we get to the musical bit. But you've got to talk us through that shirt tonight, Russell. You have got to talk us through that shirt. You have been getting it tight on the State of Mind WhatsApp group.
And you know, luckily for me, I don't give a toss, mate. That's just the best. That's just the best thing. The only way you can wear this sort of clobber is if you don't really care what people think. So, luckily for me, I don't. I mean, I've had this for years, mate. It's a top man number, believe it or not, and I've got to give them their due. It has stood the test of time. I got this in 2012. And there's not a hint of fading on it or nothing. Don't get me wrong. It's not like an Adidas t-shirt that you wear twice a week. You know what I mean? It's only certain occasions, and I thought there is no bigger stage than Screamacelica, my man, to be gracing you with my leopard print presence. I'm having it, man.
You're having it. Did you wear it when you had the pub?
Aye. 100%, mate.
So you were channeling your inner Rover's Return Bet Gilroy, eh?
Well, you could say that. But I mean, it was like folk, I think, like a character in the world, mate. I think there's not enough characters out there. And
quite right, there isn't enough characters at all.
There's not, and to me, it's just a shirt at the end of the day, and anyone could wear it. If you like the look of a shirt and it's a diesel number that's just a plain denim shirt, crack on, my man. If you like a Primark shirt, crack on. If you like a leopard print shirt, you end up on Screamacelica. That's all I'm saying, mate.
Does Top Man still exist? Is that one of them that's went under?
I've got to be honest. It wasn't a commonly visited shop on my hit list, but this was a one-off, man.
Aye. If Top Man are listening and they want to sponsor this podcast, then just contact us. Anybody that wants to sponsor this podcast, just contact us and we'll talk. I've noticed Paul right away coming in. Old and scary spice. Old spice and scary spice.
Old spice is good.
What can you do when your own producer is ripping the mick right at you? I've got a question to ask you before we go into this, Russell.
Right.
Have you ever been hit with a rhythm stick?
That'd be telling all, Kev.
Have you ever been hit with a rhythm stick? Aye.
I get a bit carried away on a Saturday night, my man, so I've been hit by a few things, mate.
I'm not going any further than that. I'm not really going any further than that. Right.
I'm feeling mischievous tonight, mate. I'm feeling mischievous.
Definitely. Right, we need to jump on the DeLorean.
Yes, I'm ready.
So, basically we're going back to a post-Henrik world. And it's a world that's empty. It's empty without Henrik Larsson. Of course, it was always going to be as soon as the King of Kings left. And we're trying to fill the void. The Hermsman's chapping my door at 6:30 on a Tuesday night. What's going on? You know what I mean? And there's nobody in the house. I'm just leaving him out there, man. Right, he can rattle my door all he wants. Right. So the post-Henrik world is trying to. See, I'm moving on. Just leave it there. Just leave it on the door. The post-Henrik world, right? We've tried to be like we've tried to fill it. He's put me off now. We've tried to fill it with Henri Camara, and that doesn't work. And this Celtic team is basically like better than our rivals were that season, eh? But we can't get in front of them. We just can't seem to really get in front of them. And see, when I was looking back at this, in truth, this is the worst Rangers side I've ever seen win a league title in my lifetime. When you look at their team, that team shouldn't have been anywhere near us to win that league title. I mean, let's be...
Henningberg? Was it Henningberg and folk like that playing for them?
It's
Chris Burke?
Novo, Big Marvin, God-fearing Marvin, and it's a terrible side, absolutely rank rotten side. Gregory Vignal,
yeah.
No match like him. I mean, what happens after this game? It basically hurts like a customs officer pinging their rubber gloves and asking you to strip, and it's much worse than this season. The end of this season is much worse than this season, and I'm going to say this. See, in fact, I don't think the end of that season will ever be topped for me, because I didn't let football affect me the same way as it did then. This season's been cakewalk compared to the end of that season. What do you remember about that horrible end?
Well, the horrible end always has a beginning. And I think we need to talk about the fact you mentioned Henri Camara there. But the rumours, of course, were we were going to replace Henrik Larsson with none other than Rivaldo, if you remember properly, that summer.
Right. No, I never...
So, it was meant to be Rivaldo. That summer was released on a free by Barcelona. And the talk was... We were looking at him, but Martin O'Neill wanted to put him on trial. Which, I mean, I know we had a show yesterday, Kev, of ifs, buts and maybes, but surely we've got to explore whether Rivaldo would have maybe, softened the blow of the king. I think he would have. I think he would have been a fitting replacement, but I remember that was the rumour at the time. I mean, that summer was just odd, wasn't it? Because once you realised he'd gone, and it really was a grieving period, and folk can slag me for that all you want, but I've never ever felt, and I was young, don't get me wrong, and maybe finally shaving a moustache and that, do you know what I mean? I was 16, man, do you know what I mean? Hormones are flying about everywhere, but Henrik leaving was... it was a death in the family sort of moment, wasn't it? And I just feel Martin O'Neill, not for the first time in his Celtic career, wasn't given the tools that were adequate to replace what was going on, Kev. Go on.
Ooh, I'm going to disagree there, because we got a guy that arrived on the last day of the transfer window in January. Which for me was the tools to win that league.
Aye, but that is a lot. Why is it first the last day in January, and why wasn't it the summer when you had 2 years to prepare for Henrik Larsson leaving?
Aye, definitely. I'm not going to disagree with it.
That's my point.
And that's my biggest regret about Craig Bellamy's time at Celtic. Know that he didn't stay after the 6 months, that he wasn't there 4 months before he came for those 6 months.
Yeah,
that's my biggest regret.
Totally. We can all look at that season, and we all know Martin O'Neill had several other reasons for leaving Celtic. my gut feeling is I feel Martin O'Neill would have left Celtic with a heavy heart potentially at the end of that season anyway. I feel that when you look back at Seville, he was a position of strength. He wasn't backed. He was not backed at all, and yet he won that league. You know, you said the word cakewalk. He won that at a cakewalk. I can't remember how many points he won it for by in 2003, 2004. By 04-05, Henrik's now gone. That's a huge thing to take out of that team. Now, remember, 04-05, Chris Sutton chipped in with 28 goals, I think.
Mm-hmm.
That was his best season, I think. Sutton, though, was someone for me who got it, and he got how big it was Henrik leaving was, and he knew he had to step up in the goal-scoring side of things, I felt he took on greater responsibility, and he'd always been someone who never shucked away from it. But I felt Sutton that year just went, oh no, like this is, we're going to need to do it ourselves, him and Big Bad John, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I thought Sutton's utilised in so many positions. He was a superstar that year for us. But I just feel O'Neill, again, had given Celtic too much evidence not to be getting back. And if we were worried about, again, the bills being paid and how we were going to afford it all, I'm sorry, I've said this a million times in the modern, in the current status, you give a great manager the right funds, he will make you the money back in tickets, in player sales if they're needed, and in Champions League qualification. And that's we seem to have lacked, and this is still Peter Lawwell, by the way, funnily enough, who was in charge then, who seemed to lack the balls when it's necessary to take us to that next level by going not all in. No one's asking anyone to go all in, but by continuing to believe that we can still keep developing, we can still keep going up this chain. Not that we've hit a glass ceiling by just making group stages, Kev. And I've got to say, at the end of that season, just in answer to your question, it was absolutely heartbreaking. There's no two ways about it. I think you're right. We knew we were better than them. For whatever reason, we've not, league titles never lie and league positions never lie, and I get that. And you've got to hold your hands up sometimes and say, for however crap they were, they completely, they deserve a lot of, praise and fairness for keeping up and for staying at the top. Not that we want to be dishing that out, but fair's fair. I think that day in the last, what came about in the last day of that season, for me, was an open goal to win the league. When you compare to how close we came 2 years before at Kilmarnock, which was a far more 50-50. They're guaranteed to scalp Dunfermline. We are going to have to play out our skin to scalp Kilmarnock by more. All we had to do was beat Motherwell. It was a far more, an open goal's a harsh word, a harsh terminology, but it was a far easier way of doing it than what we faced 2 years before. And I just felt with the experience of 2 years before still hurting, that would have been a given that we would have got the job done that day. Freak things happen. I think that you look at the manner of the goals. McDonald scored a deflection and overhead kick. I think one was deflected anyway. Another one, the overhead kick. You go, this is madness. But that's not the game we're talking about. As you rightly pointed out, Craig Bellamy. Wow. The highlights from the match we're covering today, Kev, I know. Had me really excited today. I'm not going to lie. Watching it back, I genuinely was. You felt it was so important. Not just him. I wasn't just watching and marvel at him, although I was. It was the relief of when he gets the third goal that you see the stand going nuts and the importance of it. I was caught up in it today, big man.
Oh, I love a trip to Tannadice. It's one of the best away trips that you can get, being in that shed, and even the Jerry Kerr, which is too wee, and you can't sit down and there's wooden seats in the corner bit, and the team's coming out that corner bit of the tunnel wall I love that. The fact that the tunnel's not in the halfway line, the tunnel's in the corner. At Tannadice. I love that. There's two comments that I want to bring in before we move to the game, because I'm not talking about Black Sunday, because I'll need to go away and meditate if you actually talk about any more about Black Sunday to me. I've just got over that therapy. Let's see. Fraser Ogilvie. Bellamy was another version of Tevez, unplayable at times. Hold that thought, Fraser, because we'll be coming back to that. Tevez is not the player I was thinking of, but we'll be coming back to who I think Craig Bellamy was a version of. Adam Beanie Smith. When Bellamy signed, I cut the collar off my Celtic top because Bellamy did. That was one of the things I noticed when he scores the winner here and he does that wee angry celebration. It looks like he's bit the collar off his top.
Aye, I was going to bring it up as well. Now, my theory was he just folded it in. So I think Adam's been a wee bit... I think he might be a bit hasty, mate. I think all he did was fold it in, big man. Adam's out with the scissors. I'm pretty sure he just folded it in. But
so we're trying to say Johnny Hayes was more radical than Craig Bellamy when he cut his collar off his top.
That's right. I think his was folded in too. But I think it was one of those wee silly flappy nylon collars though, Kev. Do you know what I mean?
It was a horrible kit. I think that kit's just been ruined by what actually happened in it. Anytime I see it now, it's just horrible. I just didn't like it. Some of the kits you see now that you didn't like at the time, like the Hampden season with the three big hoops. I didn't like that at the time, but see when I see it now with the big Umbros and all of that through it, that looks better now than what it did at the actual time.
At the time.
The stuff like that. Paul's put in the comments as well, Rivaldo says about being offered a trial for Celtic. Replacing one of the biggest players in the history of the club wouldn't have been easy, but I'm sure that I could have made my own story at Celtic. There you go. There you go.
You need to look at the one thing, just to very quickly touch on that, is you need to look at how seriously he took it at Olympiacos. He did not go there. Rivaldo had this reputation for, waltzing about and that. If you look at his best bits, he's an Olympiacos legend, one of the best players of all time. He was doing magical things for them. I think he stayed there for 4 years up to he was about 36, 37.
I know.
He took it seriously, and if he'd came with that attitude to Celtic, I mean, imagine the day Rivaldo signs for Celtic. It would have been bonkers.
It's utterly madness. I forgot about that. I can't believe I forgot about that crazy episode that we tried to get Rivaldo on loan.
Yeah. There was another one, Amoroso, that he tried to get as well. The other Brazilian striker, I think he'd been at Dortmund. He'd had a good spell in Italy.
That's right, aye.
And again, he was offered a trial.
And 15 years later, things haven't really improved. Right, so I've parked a DeLorean on Sandeman Street. We've fired into Dundee. I've parked it on Sandeman Street. It's the 19th of March 2005. We find ourselves, along with the 10,828, going to Tannadice to where we're playing a bottom of the league, Dundee United. A Dundee United who have just recently sacked Ian McCall as manager, and his assistant, Gordon Chisholm, actually replaced him. Now, Chisholm lasts 9 months in the job before he gets replaced by Craig Brewster.
Right.
We're looking for victory to take us back to the top of the league. And despite a good run of form, the team are looking leggy. There's already rumours about Martin O'Neill, what's going to happen at the end of the season. And the squad are looking like this is just a season too far for them. So the team that wandered out the tunnel that day is Big Rab in goals, Wee Jackie, Bobo Baldy, Stan Varga, Ulrich Lawson, Aidan McGeady, Stan Petroff, Neil Lennon, Alan Thompson, Craig Bellamy and John Hartson. The subs that day were Ross Wallace, who came on for Lawson in 78 minutes, Stephen Henshaw, who came on for McGeady in 84 minutes, and Chris Sutton, who came on for Hartson after 61 minutes. And the subs that weren't used were Marshall, Valharan, David Fernandez and Sean Maloney. What's your thoughts on that team, Russell?
I think the first thing we need to start from back to front, right? So, has Rod Douglas won his place back off David Marshall?
I think by this point, yes.
Must have.
Mm-hmm.
That's mad. That's mad.
I knew you come to think. Knew you come to think about it. I didn't think about Big Douglas. Coming back into it.
I looked at the Wikipedia and I watched obviously the Celtic the Celtic wiki. We need to give them a wee mention actually, because they do help us a lot with the show.
Oh, definitely,
aye. Cheers, guys. But yeah, I think I watched the YouTube highlights first, and I thought, wait, why is Rab Douglas playing? So I presumed Marshall was injured, and then you go on, you see he's on the bench. Now I don't know, maybe he wasn't fully fit. I'm not sure. I can't remember that time, but I thought Douglas was. I didn't think he was out the building by then, but by no stretch there, I think he was playing first team football by then. And you look back to the Barcelona Marshall game and all that. That was the year before.
Mm-hmm.
That was the season before, and he'd had this huge, whirlwind beginning to his Celtic career. So it is. See, when you see that, and he was out the team by O'Neill. I would say the narrative now is that Strachan didn't fancy Marshall and replaced him with Boric. However, I'm beginning to, when I see stuff like that, I think, is this form obviously quite, dipped quite badly that season, and perhaps even O'Neill would have been strengthening the goalkeeping position in the summer had he stayed.
Well, you look at O'Neill's goalkeepers that he signed.
Who's the best one?
Big Rab. You had Headman. You had Broto.
He was the best one.
Broto was probably the best one, eh?
He definitely was.
But I didn't complain about. I didn't complain about him signing Headman either. And Headman suits Screamacelica. He was a bit of a head case, eh? Afterwards,
he thought he was a heat case. It turns out he's just a big blouse, mate. Couldn't he? That Bayern Munich, that goal away to Bayern Munich.
Oh, I was in Munich. I was in Munich that night, and one nothing up with 20 minutes to go, and you end up throwing it away again, and. But that was Old Olympic Stadium that was in. And I remember when Alan Thompson scored, I didn't actually see him scoring because you're that far away, and the advertising boards were that high. It was a diving header, so you didn't see Thompson doing the diving header because you were that far. All you saw was the team celebrating, and obviously you celebrated. That was a great trip. That met a lot of St. Pauli fans on that trip. And that was Munich's a good city. The Bayern fans were a bit arrogant, but there we go. The first thing that I looked when I looked at this team, it's an old side. It looks old. Some of the names on it, you can. I mentioned before they've went a season too far, but you're having a look at it. You've got Baldy, you've got Varga. Lennon and Thompson are the two sitters in the midfield because we're playing a 4-4-2 that day. So your two centre midfield's got no pace in it whatsoever, and Thompson and Lennon sit there, eh? You've got a young McGeady who's just breaking into the side at that point, eh? And you've got Hartson who's not the most mobile up front. It's a team, when you look at it, it's there to dig out a result. For me, anyway.
I think you're spot on. I think you're absolutely bang on the money. I think that whole season, my fear was. And again, it goes back to, you look at Seville and you think a couple of key additions then, a couple more £6 million signings, one or two, I'm not saying spend 25 million, but another couple of 5-6 million. I felt that O'Neill had earned that at that point, by the way, by getting us that final and taking Mourinho's brilliant Porto team that far. I really do. And then by that season, I think you're right, I felt that the average age of the team was now 30, which is far too high for an average age to be. Do you know what I mean? And I had a thing at the time, Kev, where I think by virtue of playing a lot of Championship Manager at the time, date of births or years of births of players were registering in my head, and I didn't know why, just photographic memory or something, man. So I was only two, and we'll, if anyone wants to test me on a year of birth of a Celtic player between 2000 and 2004 or something like that, then I'm happy to play. Or any player, in fact. And but genuinely, I was like, he was born in 71, he was 73, he's and that's how I was like processing their ages at the time. I know that sounds total messed up, but I'm a weirdo. It was mad how how many of the players had now become in this cycle of just coming out their peak, but still expected to do their peak's work. And I feel that McGeady had far too much pressure on him in that environment.
Mm-hmm.
Far too much pressure was placed on, and that's not O'Neill's fault either. He's got a great talent there that he's got to play. And I think, though, for the guy who's going to come up with a moment of magic, shouldn't be someone at that stage who would have been, 18 years old?
He would have been 18
approaching his 19th birthday. And by that season, you knew there was a lot of weight of expectation on McGeady. And that's not how it should have worked.
When you look at that side, only McGeady and Bellamy are going to supply any. He's disappeared. Only McGeady.
Don't worry.
Only McGeady and Bellamy are going to supply any flair and pace in that side. Petrov's on the right-hand side of midfield, but I've said Petrov is the best Celtic midfielder in the last 20 years, and I'm not going to deny that. But he was never a right-hand sided midfielder. He gave you a shift out on the right-hand side, but that was not his best position.
Do you think that frustrated him?
I think when you have a look at this side, there seems to be a lot of get the best 11 on the pitch and see what happens, which was one of the things that we says about Neil Lennon. And this seems to be, we've went to a flat back four, but it's obviously Martin's wanting a big back line because you've got Ulrich Larsson playing at left back, who is not going to give you the galloping runs that you would expect.
Whipping balls into the box past it, do you know what I mean?
But then Douglas, what do we know? Because the two fullbacks set up the first two goals. So what do we know about galloping fullbacks, and why are we trying to tell Martin O'Neill how to pick a football team?
Totally.
I mean, we start the game well, and in the 5th minute, Jackie Mack bursts across the halfway line, and he's got that wee scurrying stride. No, remember, he always seems to be, his legs seem to be struggling to keep up with his top half of his body as he's running, and he finds Craig Bellamy unmarked on the right-hand side corner of the box, Bellamy takes a couple of touches and unleashes this shot right into the opposite top corner. I mean, if the net wasn't there, it was killing somebody in that stand. It was hit that hard. It was an absolute peachy goal.
That's what I call an arrow. That is going like an arrow into that corner. And do you know, the only thing that killed it for me a wee bit watching the highlights back was the commentator saying he's lining up for a shot here. He's in the exact corner of the box. He's no right to be lining up for a shot there. I wish the commentator had said that, because it'd been brilliant to see the reaction if, he's had a shot at goal. It was spontaneous. And that's that killer stuff we were talking about yesterday as well, the killer instinct thing. Mm-hmm. That I don't know where he spied that shot from, but the way it's so deliberate, it's very, very good.
I think it's the space. I think he's got that much space. He goes, I'm having a go at this. And for me, he even telegraphs it to the goalkeeper. I'm putting it in that corner, by the way, but you're not stopping this. I'm only putting this in one place, but you're not stopping this. It's an absolute peachy goal. And that's what Bellamy brought to that side. It was complete and utter, individuality and that brilliance. He has another chance just after it, and when he runs down the left like a Welsh Usain Bolt, and I think it's Mark Wilson he outstrips, and he bursts into the box and hits the side netting with the ball.
And what goal was that he did? He then made up for the Man City Man U derby at Old Trafford. He scores the exact same goal.
The exact same goal,
and he knocks it in near post. Almost, it's the exact same type of finish. It was mental. When I watched it back, I thought, that is exactly what he did at Old Trafford. And it's the same type of finish he goes for, beat him at the near post as opposed to cutting it across the goal, because you'll not expect that.
Aye. It's a poor, when he bursts into the box, it's a poor finish because he just kind of stabs it instead of, when you look at his finish a couple of minutes before, and then you look at this finish, it doesn't bode well for the game that we spoke about at Fir Park when he missed a couple of one-on-ones. But you go, how can you do the brilliant bit then just make an arse of it. Big Bobo then misses a free header just after it as well. He headers it straight into Tony Bullock's hand. Then bizarrely will allow Dundee United to equalise. So for anybody that can remember this goal, the Dundee United goalie launches the ball from the edge of his own box and nobody touches it until Jim McIntyre volleys it in the Celtic penalty area, just above the penalty spot. It was an unbelievable goal to lose. And this was when Stan Varga as well. Stan was superb for us, but at this point, his legs are creaking and he's not looking as mobile. But this ball doesn't touch the ground for the goalkeeper kicking it until Jim McIntyre volleys it into the ball. I'm calling it a volley. I'm sure Jim would probably say he scuffed it, but it wasn't a clean. He didn't catch it clean. But he managed to direct the ball into the net, and I was like, what a horrible goal to lose! What a terrible goal to lose!
Well, Kev, do you not think it was the exact type of ball that Celtic defence you didn't try and play against them? Because that Celtic defence, that was meat and drink. Do you know what I mean?
I know.
Lumping the ball up from the goalie. That's the one thing. You worried about teams when they passed it round the Celtic defenders. Do you know what I mean? Because them turning was maybe a wee bit slower, as you say. But balls coming that long, that was the one thing you always went, perfect, they can do that all day if they want, do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. We'll be fine. And that goal, as you rightly say, it just seems to, once it's bounced once, you just know you're going, that's going to be the goal when I was watching it back. And I did remember it when I seen it, but it was like, you knew this is going to be the goal here. And I just felt like that type of ball, that is what I associated with those Celtic defenders just lapping up all day. They loved that. But I've got to say, you look at the Dundee United's 3 centre-backs that day, and you think, do you know what? They had 3 lumps as well, did they know?
They did. Gary Kenneth was one of them.
Ritchie, Paul Ritchie and Alan Archibald.
There's no much mobility in there. What I noticed about the Dundee United team, and this is something I forgot, Derek McInnes played for them. Derek McInnes played for Dundee United. I forgot about that. I mean,
he came back for West Brom.
That's right. Aye. I mean,
West Brom he came from.
See that goal, Big Varga looks like a teenager that's been sent to tidy his room because he's just like sort of, I'm meant to deal with that ball. And it's a horrible goal. Even when I saw it again, and I can remember watching it at the time, and I'm going, how did they manage that? It's just a punt down the field. Nothing much happens after that, but we regain the lead on 34 minutes. Ulrich Lawson, after I just says he was never a fullback, decides whatever Jackie can do, he can do as well on the left-hand side, and he strolls across the halfway line. And he fires the ball to Bellamy on the left edge of the box. And with this time, with his left foot, because his first one was his right foot, with his left foot, he fires it into the opposite top corner. And you go, wow, how did you manage to do that? This is a tremendous strike because he's running away from goal. He's running towards the corner flag, and he somehow manages to turn his body and angle the shot across his body, straight into the top corner. It's another fantastic shot. He's got great gravity. He's got great purpose with that goal. But there you go, a rocket with his right foot and a rocket with his left foot.
Oh, mate, I mean, the way he could swivel with the hips as well was, outstanding. I mean, there's a moment later in the game, quite similar, but he's got his back to goal, shimmies one way, goes the other, and he probably, by his standards, should have scored. But yeah, I just think he had a low sense of gravity, and he could just turn just so quick. I don't know what the saying is, turns on a sixpence or something, but I mean, he really was something like that anyway. But I mean, he really could. It was amazing, as you say. It's the fact that he swiveled his body as he's hitting the shot. Mm-hmm. So he's having to do both techniques in one. If he hits that straight there, it's going 20 yards wide. But he'd add all that. But to generate the same amount of power as if he was hitting it straight, but to be going not to the near post, but the far corner shows you how quickly he's swiveled his body into position to do that. It's really, really impressive, actually.
It's power and accuracy. that you can actually get that split second at that speed. It's phenomenal. Liam Dominic Collo says Gary Kenneth now at Dundee junior side Lockheed United, probably the best centre back in the league up in the east. I think I saw a documentary. It could have been A View from the Terrace, done a bit about Gary Kenneth and his return, and he is playing for Lockheed United now. What age will Kenneth be? Because he was a young laddie at that time.
I think he was born in 87, I'm sure. I'm sure 87, I think so. Same age as me, I think so. But 33, 34. It'll be something like that anyway. It might not be 87, but it'll be something like that.
He got a Scotland cap as well, Gary Kenneth. So there you go. You've got a Scottish international playing for Lockheed United.
Mental.
At this precise moment in time. We're into the second half, and Dundee United are better than us in the second half. Big Rabs kept us in the game a couple of times.
Yep.
And that's symptomatic of Celtic this season. And if you think Craig Bellamy scored 2 thunder bastards, Barry Robson says anything Craig Bellamy can do, I can do as well. And this is another peachy goal. And it's something that we saw him doing for Celtic when he eventually rocked up at Celtic Park. But it's what a strike this is as well. And Big Rab didn't have any chance of saving this.
No. I mean, we talked about arrows earlier on, Kev. I mean, that is exactly, it's the same arrows that Barry Robson's using. Again, it's across the keeper.
Mm-hmm.
But there's that much pace on it and accuracy, again, as you say. There's nothing anyone can do. But what a strike. And he did that a lot for Dundee United before we actually brought him in, you know. It seemed to take a lot for us to want to take the humongous £1 million punt on him.
Mm-hmm.
You wonder if, you know, again, I think he signed for Celtic, he was 29. I think he could have been there a couple of years before that. I really do. I mean, because when he came, he was one of my favourite players I've got to admit in that team. I loved his dig, but I thought he became more about his dig than his actual technical ability because he was older now. He was 31, 32 back when he was still in the centre of midfield.
What I noticed watching this game back is he's built like a butcher's pencil when he strikes us. The 3 years later, when he comes to us, he's full out and he's
different.
He's still a winger at this point. He's still playing in wide left at this point. By the time he gets to us, he's bulked up. Maybe it's just his metabolism changing as getting older. But it's some striking. He enjoyed it. He really did enjoy it. He went a bit rage after he scored as well.
I like that though. I like that. You hit a pinger like that was a ping, mate. Do you know what I mean? You do that to equalise against Celtic when it's, you know, not in a disrespectful way, but one of only a few times that season Tannadice is going to be full house. I read the crowd was 10,828. So that's it, pretty much as full as it can get. You know, what a buzz that must be. Fair play.
Aye, good. This seems to spring Celtic into life. And after Robson equalises, we have Sutton has a half chance, which produces a good save. Craig Bellamy himself has another chance as well. But the winner comes, and we talk about Tony Bullock shelling the ball down the park. Big Rab shells one down the park, and Chris Sutton flicks it on. Bellamy is on it like a flash, and it bounces once, then with his left peg, he's sort of half volley, half chips it over the goalkeeper into the net.
Nice.
And it's one of the best hat tricks you'll ever see. And it's probably one of the best hat tricks I've ever seen in a Celtic jersey.
I agree.
And he runs to that corner with the wee fair play stand in the shed, and he's got that grimace of somebody who's constantly constipated, because he always looked angry when he scored. I like
that. I like that.
But that's how I think he used to bite the collars off his top. Rather than cut the bag, he used to just bite them. And that was his pre-game ritual. He'd just bite the collar off his top. And that was in 81 minutes. I think he scored 80 minutes.
And I think we've got to say as well, Sutton, man. I mean, this guy is a joke. You know, folk talk about the telepathy with him and Henrik. I think all good players worked better with Chris Sutton beside them. Look at Shearer, how prolific he was working with Sutton. Nae mug. Larsson, best years with Sutton. You look at Bellamy there. Sutton's came on as a sub. I'm guessing he's got an injury prior to coming on as much as he went off later on. And straight away, it's just the intelligence of the flick. He always knows where they're making the run, where he's to put it, where it's to go. He was the perfect foil for so many different strikers. And, you know, even that season we talk about him playing with, you know, a slower John Hartson, they were still battering in goals between the two of them in Europe and domestically. Sutton, in fact, took, I feel, a lot more responsibility on his shoulders to become more of a goal scorer because the king had left. And he actually ended up, I think, with nearly 30 goals. I think it was 28 or 29 he scored that season. And I think for me, he is the second best striker I've seen play for Celtic. No two ways in my lifetime. No two ways.
Nah, if you were a partner with Chris Sutton and you see that ball coming and you see him positioning himself for it, you're off. Because you're going, he's flicking that on. And
he'll find you. But that's the difference, Kev. He'll find you. It's easy to flick it on to nowhere. But he has got the football brain. He knows where you're making the run. Mm-hmm. He's either seen it out the corner of the eye, or he's just, if he's smart, he'll be going into that area over there, so I'll put it over there. But I thought, for me, that flick on there just epitomised him to a T. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Zinco, usual contributor, comes in and says Sutton was world class. Honestly, I don't think he maybe gets the credit that he deserves, Wales, because he was playing alongside the greatest player that a lot of us are ever going to see in a Celtic jersey. But when that greatest player comes out and goes, I wouldn't have been half the player if it wasn't for that guy.
Yeah.
David Kelly, this is a great point that David Kelly makes. Funny how many good strikers Sutton just happened to play alongside, eh?
That's it. And I'll look back. I think it's brilliant by Zinco saying about the world class element. Now, would Chris Sutton have got that label if Sven-Goran Eriksson had grown, you know, the cojones to call him up for the England World Cup squad 2002? Because if you're telling me Michael Owen wouldn't have benefited from playing alongside Chris Sutton or would have done better with Emil Heskey, we are talking a different sport, a completely different sport. Now, there's a stat about Michael Owen with Emil Heskey, which is, I think Heskey supplied him with, I can't remember the amount of percentage, but it's a high percentage of Owen's goals. And I go, well, double it. And that's what would have been the case if it had been... Sutton would have looked at Owen straight away and went, I know exactly what I'm doing with you. It would have worked. They would have been deadly, especially Sutton at his peak, 2002 World Cup. And that's all because he told Glenn Hoddle to ran it.
Was it Kevin? Was it Glenn Hoddle? Was it Glenn Hoddle? I thought it was Kevin Keegan.
No, Glenn Hoddle. 100% Glenn Hoddle. But I just feel like that was really petty. And I do also believe that it was the fact he was playing the Scottish game. I've got to get that in there because I do think there was a snobbery towards that. I mean, Henrik Larsson must have been sitting in that Sweden squad laughing because they played England. And he's going, I can't believe that guy Emil Heskey is a starter for them. And my pal Sutty, who just set up 53 goals for me last season, isn't even in the squad. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing.
What I love about Sutton as well is he hated Alan Shearer. And everybody was when they won the title, when Blackburn won the title, the SAS, and both of them couldn't stand each other. They just couldn't actually stand.
Brilliant.
Stand each other.
Sutton tells it like it is. That's the thing. See Sutton, and even in the media pundits, okay, he knows when he's being controversial. He knows when he's being controversial. That doesn't stop him saying what he thinks. And when he said that about Dunfermline, he's right. You look back now in history, and you look at silly Jimmy Calderwood. You know what I mean? You go, no, why David Murray hired you for Dunfermline? Of course, Sutton would have known that by then because he's quite an intellectual man. And Big Sutton wasn't afraid just to call it as he seen it, and I like that in someone.
I remember speaking to Gary Caldwell, and I asked him who was the hardest, John Hartson or Chris Sutton to mark. And Gary Caldwell actually says, he says, Hartson, you know what you're going to get. It's a wrestling match. It's physical. And he says, Sutton's a sneaky bastard and you don't know what you're ever going to get with him. that maybe actually just sums up what it was. But Big Hearts, and you're getting a wrestling match and it's all physical and that. With Big Sutton, you didn't ken what you were going to come up against. He could do everything. He was a full package. He
could play as well, Sutton.
Oh, he could. He was an intelligent player.
You don't get to play centre half that amount of games for Celtic, or centre mid that many games for Celtic. I know what you were saying earlier about shoehorning players in, but at times he was the best choice for those other variety of positions as opposed to up front, and that is serious kudos to me. Do you know what I mean? For being that, having that again, that comes down to the football brain, because he's not in any of these positions for pace or energy or whatever. Well, energy maybe, but not pace. Do you know what I mean? And yet you could play him centre mid, and he offers something different. He had definitely a bigger football brain, and I think he gets credit for as well. He wasn't just some lump up front, Kev. Do you know what I mean? That you were just hoofing balls up to, and hopefully Son will come off his backside or his shoulder or whatever. He was nothing like that. Nothing like that.
Nothing like that at all. After Martin O'Neill says about Chris Sutton and Craig Bellamy, he says, Chris Sutton liked him and Chris Sutton didn't like anybody. He says, but he got on with Craig Bellamy, so he says Bellamy must have something. After this game, Martin O'Neill says Craig Bellamy's just sent a message to the board, and they must find the money to buy him. And Bellamy himself said that he wanted to make a big impression at Celtic because to play in front of these fans is very, very special. So Bellamy got us as well. It's just the same as Big Chris, as we've been talking. Chris got us. So how did we end up getting Craig Bellamy? Basically, it was because he fell out with Graham Souness at Newcastle. So you're always only a winner with the Celtic support if you fall out with Graham Souness. I mean, I would just love to hit Graham Souness. Right, I know Souness is a character and all of that on the telly, but I would love to hit Graham Souness across the face with a live kipper, man. Just like, not a dead kipper, it would have to be a live kipper so it's flat on my boot. And when you have a look at like Bellamy coming in for Henri Camara, who by this point we had sent back to Wolves, it was like insipid to inspired. Bellamy absolutely carried that team in certain games. And as soon as Bellamy came into that side, he was by far the best player in Scotland by a week. He was quite easily the best player in Scotland for those 4 or 5 months that he was actually there.
So, you've got the option, you've got someone who you're saying that quickly is the best player in Scotland. It's hard to disagree. Of course, I totally get your point on that. He makes a huge impression, so he gets it. He's the best player in the country. He actually does he does the business on the park as well. Tells the club he wants to stay. It doesn't stay.
Right. The reason that he didn't want to stay, the reason that he never stayed was because, and Paul's told the story, and I'll tell the story as well. He wanted to sign, the fans wanted him to sign, but the bottom line was, if Gordon Strachan, who by this point had came in as manager, wanted to sign him, it was blowing his budget. It was blowing his whole budget on Craig Bellamy because the signing on fee was about £6 million. So Gordon Strachan decided against signing Craig Bellamy, and he signed Magic Zaraski, Arthur Boric and Nakamura. Now, I'm not going to play the devil's advocate here. Can you picture your life if you've ever seen Arthur Boric or Nakamura in a Celtic jersey?
No, I think that's fair completely. When was it that you signed Venegoor and Donati? Was that the year later?
That was a year later, aye. That was a year later.
I was hoping it wasn't, because I was going to compare their $6 million with Bellamy's, but you've got me this time, Kev. I've got to admit it. Aye. I mean, their $6 million I would exchange for Bellamy, to be fair. Can you imagine that?
But you would never seen the holy goal, and you wouldn't have seen the genius.
I'm not. That'd be really, really. And again, what does that then leave him with in terms of, another couple of Mo Camaras in the team because he's got no money to buy anyone else? I mean, I get that. I'd get that point. I forgot that was the same summer. But would he have worked well as well with Strachan? I don't know. Maybe that played a part as well.
Was Strachan his manager at Coventry? Somebody in the comments can maybe...
Yes, he was.
Was Strachan his manager?
Was.
Aye, so maybe Strachan just didn't fancy him. But I must admit, I'll go with Paddy John Hughes here in the comments. Good call with Strachan. I think when you look back on it, it was a good call with Strachan. Bellamy himself, he left Newcastle and went to Blackburn for 6.75 million. Then he went on to Liverpool, then to West Ham, then he moved to Man City in 2008, where Mark Hughes, friend of a State of Mind podcast, was the manager, and he played the best football of the career. The clubs that he left Celtic for, he was involved in £40 million worth of transfers after he left Celtic. He went to Man City for £14 million. Mm-hmm. £14 million. When you watch him at Man City, YouTube this, watch his goals at Man City. I think he played his best football of his career at Man City. And now I'm going to rewind us to the comment earlier on about Tevez. I was listening to the World Football podcast, Radio 5 with Tim Vickery, and I can't remember the other boy's name. And they were praising Sergio Aguero and his ability to shoot across his body. Bellamy is better than Aguero at shooting across that cross body stuff. He was a bit like Tevez. He had that wee devilment on him, but for me, Craig Bellamy is a better finisher than Sergio Aguero. And Russell's dumbfounded.
No.
Absolutely dumbfounded. Watch the goals that he scores for Man City.
How many?
We're not talking how many. We're not talking about how many.
There's not going to be no highlight reels of the ones he's missed, Kev.
Huh?
There's not going to be a highlight reel of the ones he's missed.
I'm talking technique. If you're going to play praise...
Surely technique results. Surely a good technique is finding the back of the net. And for me, I feel that Aguero, finishing-wise... I remember Aguero's debut for City. I think it was his debut, and it was like City had signed a cheat signing. Do you know what I mean? I think it was Swansea away, and he just takes the ball outside the box. He's about 25 yards. He just thumps it, dips into the bottom corner across his body, as you're talking about, almost effortlessly. No backlift. And I'm not here to criticise Craig Bellamy, because I love Bellamy as a player. You know that I 100% did, but I don't know.
Right. I'll clarify this. I'll kind of rewind myself a bit. I'll kind of rewind myself. Maybe rein myself in. Fire it into reverse. Beep, 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 beep. There we go. There's my reverse gear. There's my reverse gear gone in just now. When on his day, right, Bellamy was just as good as finisher as Aguero. When you see the amount of goals that he scored across his body.
Yes,
across his body.
I think Bellamy was someone who needed to play every week, right? He needed to be treated as the main man. He liked it. He needed his ego tickled. I think he was one of those players. Nothing wrong with that, by the way. When you've got the ability that he does, I totally get that. I think there was a text or something between him and Shearer when he was Shearer's sort of partner, and then they'd had a fallout. I think at City, it probably wasn't 45 games starting, even under Hughes, despite the 14 million price tag you speak of, when I think he was definitely worthy of being that. I think his peak moment was that Old Trafford game. I thought he destroyed United that day. And if City had won, I think his name in folklore at City would be different, if that makes sense. I think... Aye,
definitely, aye.
Do you know what I mean? They lost that game, which goes against them, but he was a joke that day. And I'm going to go back to what you're saying about the money, which you're spot on, by the way. I agree. Naka and Boric, I would always want them. But this is when it comes to it. Why does it have to be like for like? If you're getting a new manager and he's identified those two players at 500 grand, Boric was. I think he was alone, in fact, sorry. Boric was alone for a year. and then it was 500 grand. So scrap that. That's buttons. And then Nakamura is 2.75 million. For me, dig deep. If Bellamy wants to come, sign him for 6.75, because the one thing with Bellamy is you get all of that back one day anyway.
You would.
And then some. He does not get sold for £2 million, for £3 million. If anything, his value goes up. All you got to do is worry about covering his wages for the time he's there. Like, he will get you goals to take you places that will generate the club more money, as I keep going back to. I would have made special exceptions for him when your goalie that we're talking about was signed on loan and Nakamura was under £3 million.
But we paid a fee for Boric within a couple of months. We actually
500 grand, mate. Come on.
Was it 500 grand? Well, when you're talking about budgets, you're talking about the wages and that as well. And yeah. I think Gordon Strachan made the right decision. I mean, we did. But
you don't want them all. This is my point, though. Why does it have to be one or the other?
I want the moon, mate. I want the moon. Bring me the moon. Of course you want it all, but we're having a look.
How unfeasible was it, Kev? How unrealistic would it have been to have went, aye, we've got enough. You look at Dermot Desmond, apparently when he wants to step in and sign Roy Keane when there's 5 months of a dud season to go and pay him 65 grand a week, we can afford it. There's no money coming back on that deal, remember? And you've got to think ambitious, man.
You have got to think ambitious, but then I can't see that Gordon Strachan's made the wrong decision there. I can't see it. I mean, there was a perfect opportunity for Bellamy to come back to Celtic, and it was in 2010 when he was leaving Man City, and he ended up going to Cardiff. For weeks, Neil Lennon and Peter Lawwell put a deal together and went to Craig Bellamy, come back to us, because Man City knew how good a player he was. Didn't they want to sell him to any of their rivals? They didn't want to sell him to anybody in the Premiership. So Celtic went in, and Bellamy himself ended up going to Cardiff in the Championship.
That's his boyhood team, away.
Fair enough. It was his boyhood team, and also it was for family reasons that he had. There were family reasons, but I'm thinking Bellamy in 2010 as well, after his season for Man City, he would have tore it up here. He would have really tore it up here. Now, I mean, you're talking about he left Celtic 40 million in transfer fees, but there's an interesting story. I mean, he started his career at Norwich, and I didn't think this was Chris Sutton maybe at Norwich at the same time as him. Was Chris Sutton at No. That would have been after it, yeah.
Miles off. I know, because Sutton was...
That'd have been after it, aye. It would have been.
Because Bellamy would have been like 12, 13. I mean, maybe Bellamy was there as a schoolboy or something like that, but I don't think that if their paths crossed, it would have been, I don't know, getting an autograph or something like that.
Ewan Boy Martin comes in there when we're talking about Bellamy, wages, Nakamura, Boric and all of that. Let's not forget Law was the CEO and didn't want high earners, which is true, because when you actually look at it, I think Sutton disappeared Sutton disappeared quite quickly because his wages. Jackie Mack disappeared to Wolves because they weren't willing to pay his wages as well. So Ewan Boy Martin has definitely got a point there. When he started his career at Norwich, and would you believe at Norwich, he was quite a lippy wee guy in the dressing room with senior pros. He never seems like the type of guy who would fall out with people, does Craig Bellamy, does he? It doesn't seem like that type of boy that would annoy the senior pros.
But though, kid, you need them. I think every team you need, but I feel like Declan knew, but you need a prick in the team. Do you know what I mean? You need someone who's a nightmare. See, even for his teammates, is a nightmare. So if he's a nightmare for his teammates, what is he like? What is he like? You know what I mean? For opposition teams, if he's a nightmare to you, I can see what Paul's saying there. He remembers Bellamy there at 15.
Expected a first team game at 15-year-old. When he broke into the Norwich first team squad, there was only one of the senior pros in the squad stuck up for him. Everybody else hated him. Who was that senior pro?
Who stuck up for Bellamy?
Who stuck up for Bellamy in the first team dressing room at Norwich.
At that time. It's going to be good, isn't it? It's going to be good. Peter Grant.
It is Peter Grant.
Yes!
Well done, man. Well done. Peter Grant.
No, I got carried away there. I was absolutely buzzing I got that right.
Peter Grant, maybe Eddie Howe's assistant, was the only person in the dressing room that stuck up for Craig Bellamy at that time. It shows you how things go about, eh? You can't talk to me for 5 minutes, Kev. I'm just sitting here buzzing, man. I'm so glad I got that right. I know. I can't believe you got that right. That's one of my. I thought you were never going to get that link, the Celtic link to that dressing room.
See, Kev, this is the influence you're having on me, mate. This is the influence you're having, big man. I'm doing my homework these days. No, I knew it must be Celtic related. I knew it had to be Celtic related. That was the only thing I could think about.
Right. Stuart Horan comes in, tankard for Boyce. We need to get you one of the tankards. We need to get one of the tankards. Philip DeMarco, Darren Huckerby. No, remember, we were always linked with Darren Huckerby as well. When Martin O'Neill was there,
type of player.
Every summer we were linked with Hakan Yakin and Darren Huckerby.
We're just going into the music phase, the new Kevin. Darren Huckerby was very much Craig Bellamy's B-side, wasn't he?
Aye, definitely. It was a Poundland Craig Bellamy.
He was his B-side. It was just... It was a dodgy cover version, whatever way you want to describe it. We're not going to do that road again.
No, we're not. We've done that last week, mate. We can't keep on repeating ourselves. It's no soccer AM we're on it. We can't keep on repeating the same joke. Yet. Ian McIntosh, Kincladze was a constant rumour as well. That's another one that always every summer that we used to get linked with Hakan Yakin, Kincladze and Darren Huckerby. That was a three there, eh? I noticed Ian McIntosh says that he's feeling rough after his COVID vaccination. I had mine last week, Ian. I ken exactly where you're coming from there. It knocked me off my feet, man. Maybe that's why I'm saying Craig Bellamy is better than Aguero, eh? Maybe that's what it is. What's the big pharmaceutical company injected with me? I do not know. Let's get on to the music, eh?
Let's do it.
Music. Right, I'm having a wee look at the official charts on the 13th of March 2005. At number 1 is McFly with All About You.
It's funny because I was...
is that the Comic Relief song?
I was 6 years at school by this point, right? And I remember when that was number 1 because my PE teacher basically comes up to me to make a deal with me, right? And he's like, look, I know it's a crash hire. You didn't do standard grade, but it's easy. That's how he talked to you. He goes, I know you're more than capable of passing this. He goes, what can I do to get you to pass this PE hire exam? And I went,
buy you a McFly album.
I'm like, well, you'll need to pay me or something, man. I'm not going to revise me. I'm an idiot. Do you know what I mean? I was like, I can't be bothered. And he's like, even though I was smart, I just was on this folk who didn't push myself, Kev, you know? And he said, I've got a deal. And I said, right then, because he thought about what I'd said. So he comes back and he goes, how does 2 checks of £32 suit you? And I went, go on. And he goes, the first and second year's disco, right, for like end of year disco or whatever, is going to be, I don't know, mid-May or something like that, or before the exams anyway. It was the Easter disco, it might have been, something like that. He says, you know your music, why don't you bring CDs in and that? He goes, and DJ for me. He goes, I need a DJ. He goes, there's a double deck CD like deck system and all that with huge speakers at the community centre. I just need you to do one afternoon and one night, and it's £32. 2 checks I'll give you for £32 for each. That's what they're paying you. I went, how long's the shows? And he's like, 2 hours, but you'll be there for 3. I went, £16 an hour to play tunes. And he goes, but you need to think, and I always remember him saying, you'll need to find some McFly CDs though, son. That's what he said at the time. And I always stood there, I was like, McFly? I went, I'm not playing that, man. He goes, you can't just be playing The Who and Oasis and that. He's like, he goes, it's 13, 14-year-olds Easter disco. So McFly being at number 1, I know I went off on another tangent, but yes, that does bring back a lot of memories, Kev, especially that song, because that's what I'd finish it with. That's what I'd finish the set with, because that would get like, you know, the youngsters that were maybe going to be couples sort of dancing and that, you know what I mean?
I don't ken where we can go after that, Russell. I don't know where we can go.
Well, you know, I'm not saying I like the song. I'm not saying I like it, but I remember back fond memories.
I remember the only time I've ever been a DJ was at a Primary 7 Leavers disco when I was in 5th year. And this shows you how long ago this was. That the Waynes just kept on coming up and asked me to play 2 Unlimited, No Limits. That shows you how that was 1991. And I think I must have played it. I think I must have played it about 15 times.
That is longer ago than I thought, Kev.
Aye, 1991, eh? So, number 4 in the charts is Dakota by the Stereophonics. That would be right up your street. You like the Stereophonics? Number 8. This will have a wee jump here. Number 8 in the charts is Crafty by New Order, and New Order is one of these bands that we're going to talk about tonight. Russell, take us away with New Order, because you want to talk about their album. What was it? Waiting on the Siren's Call.
Aye, so it's funny because I remember that Crafty song being on it was either CD UK or Top of the Pops, and I watched them do it live, and I'll be honest to you, 16, 17 years old, what would I have been, 17, I didn't know much about New Order at that age, but I just watched that song live and thought, that's a belter. I loved it right from the get-go. I thought, I really like that song. Done a bit of digging, like they did 2 more singles. One was Crafty and one was Jetstream, I think.
Yes, and Jetstream was with Anna Matronic from the Scissor Sisters. Aye.
Oh, is that her from the... I hadn't joined the dots. She was from the Scissor Sisters. Mm-hmm. Ah, okay. So the 2 singles that followed, I remember keeping an eye out for when the singles are coming out, because I wanted to hear the next song this band New Order's done, you know what I mean? And then, of course, at that time, LimeWire was we're allowed to say that, eh?
Aye.
I was illegally downloading from LimeWire at my bud's house at the time. And she was cool. She was really into music and all that. And she's like, you do know that's Joy Division? I'm like, you what? And then I was like, I only know that one song by Joy Division. And don't get me wrong, I think only she did as well. But we couldn't believe that was the same band. You know what I mean? It was like, what? And that's how I found out, like, obviously, like True Faith and stuff like that. Blue Monday, songs like that coming out and going, this band's mega. And then I've got to give a shout out to the guy he used to work for me at the pub. He would do the cleaning in the morning, do some day bar shifts, but his age is probably with you, Kev, right? And he would always hark back to 91 and the glory days and that. But he was a good guy, man, and he knew his music. And he put on Waiting for the Siren's Call. And I went, I recognise that song from a time. And then the next song that came in the jukebox, this was before the pub had opened, was Crafty. And I went, now wait, the new. I mean, I loved that song back in the day. And he told me it's from this album, Waiting for the Siren's Call. And I listened to it the past week, and it's very good. It seems kind of like what I said about Bowie last week, like they were having a lot of fun with it. I felt like it's a really upbeat lot of songs. And it's only by track number 8, I can't remember the name of it now, where you first hear the sort of stereotypical Peter Hook bass line. Do you know, like before that, it's all like sort of really short, like, I don't know how to describe it because I can't play music, do you know what I mean? But it's a lot more bouncy, and then it's like track 8, I can't remember what it's called. and it's like the longer sort of just typical Peter Hook style riffs. But no, it's a great CD. The 3 singles are superb, and I enjoyed listening to it this week. It took me back, definitely.
There's been a couple of people in the comments mentioned about LimeWire. David Kelly went, LimeWire, download a film in just 2 weeks. Who was the other one about LimeWire there? I've lost it. It's disappeared. Oh, aye. Daniel Mack, cost you more in Lecky than it did for a cinema ticket, did LimeWire. Well,
again, I was using the girlfriend's internet at the time. Do you know what I mean? Was it dial-up? Dial-up. Don't remember it used to get the dial-up internet. Or is that even before your time as well? No. My dad worked for BT, so we were like one of the first folk. I remember like 95 or something like that. We were like using the internet for the first time in that. New Order are a seminal band, and even Joy Division. I mean, when you go into their back catalogue, from Joy Division to what they became, and they invented Ibiza. They went to Ibiza, and when they came, by the time you get to them releasing Technique and Brotherhood, you can hear the right disco influence. And I've seen them. I've seen New Order twice. The first time I saw New Order, this is going to make you feel really, really young, Russell. I saw New Order at the Reading Festival in 1993. They headlined on the Sunday night. And they were superb. That was when what album? 1993, Republic. Republic had came out with what's the song? I can't remember. It'll come back to me. It's interesting though, because the first time I seen them was at Tea in the Park, 2005.
Well, I reckon I seen them on this tour at the Barrowlands. I reckon I saw them on the Waiting on the Sirens called tour at the Barrowlands.
Yeah, I nearly said Brendan Rodgers came on. Brandon Flowers came on the stage.
Was that him for the Killers?
Aye, and he did a song with them. I can't remember which one. But he definitely came out and did a song. It might have been Love Will Tear Us Apart, but Brandon Flowers, Tea in the Park, 2005, New Order, definitely happened. I had to watch it before I came on, in fairness.
Scotland 1983, Regret, that was the song I was thinking about. It was on Republic. Regret was the simple was the single I was talking about. Ian McIntosh, no way, Kev, I was at Reading that year also, saw that. See, if I was to go back to that Reading Festival, Ian, I would probably go and see that now, but I didn't go and see them at the time because I wasn't a big get into them, Russell. They're a very, very good band. A really, really good band. If you're saying that they done Love Will Tear Us Apart at Tea in the Park that year, I reckon it was Waiting on the Sirens call that I did see it, because I think that was the first tour that they were going to, that they started doing Joy Division stuff. And
I think it was a big deal because I'm sure they'd played it. I could be wrong here, but it was one of the festivals before Tea in the Park. They'd done Love Will Tear Us Apart, and as I say, the missus at the time knew they were going to play it. That's why we went to see them. She knew, like, that's what we were kind of there for. They were there. I was there for Crafty. She's like, song's rubbish. I'm like, it's amazing. But she was there just for that one song she wrote because it was her favourite song of all time or something. And it was because she knew they were going to play that song because they played at a festival in the month before or the few weeks before.
That was, so I take it Love did tear us apart, and that's how you're no longer there.
Yeah. It's the same old story for me, mate. You know, this is just how it goes, Kev. If
you steal your girlfriend's shirts, what do you expect?
There's still plenty of mine.
Right, we'll only go down that rabbit hole. Right, question: what's your favourite New Order album then?
I don't know, man.
I don't
know what my favourite New Order album is. That's probably the first album I've listened to in full by them in my life.
Is it? Right.
Probably.
For me, the album that you've got to actually listen to is Power, Corruption and Lies. If you're going to like listen to any New Order album, the 1983 album Power, Corruption and Lies, then Technique, they're my two go-to with New Order. But
can I tell you my favourite songs?
Aye, of course you can.
I like Crystal,
right?
Temptation, and True Faith.
True Faith.
Are they all on different albums?
Yes. Aye, they're awfully different. They're awfully different, like time spans.
I was hoping they were going to be in the same album. I could say, well, I ken that one. Do you know what I mean?
Crystal was on Lost Sirens, which was 2013. That was.
Is it that? That's a tune, that is, as well. I love that song.
Aye. I ken you didn't really do albums, but New Order are fantastic. I mean, anytime you hear that drum beat of Blue Monday,
brilliant.
And the story about Blue Monday, that it was the biggest selling 12-inch of all time, and they didn't make any money off it because the sleeve cost too much. That is just, do you not ken that story, no?
No, go for it.
No. Factory Records is what me and Paul, well, what I wanted a State of Mind to be like that, but Paul's more business-minded than me, and he doesn't go down the Factory Records route. Basically, New Order made a sleeve, a Peter Saville, who's a big artist, sleeve for the 12-inch, right? And it cost more to make the sleeve than what it did. So basically, they were selling the EP for £3, but it actually cost them £4 to make the record in the sleeve. So they made a loss. Basically, like New Order, basically New Order bankrolled Factory Records for years, and they bankrolled the Hacienda for years as well. If you ever want to read any books or anything about the Hacienda, go to the New Order stuff about it, and there's some great documentaries about it. And the drummer for New Order is absolutely fantastic. He might be the only sensible one in the group, and he's gone. I'm sitting at meetings, and they're talking about propping up this nightclub with my money. He says it's completely madness, but that's what they were like. Factory Records was really, really punk. It was a punk record label, and they just done everything. Everything was about the music. Nobody had contracts. Nobody had anything. And so that's Blue Monday. Somebody's came in and actually says they lost 50 pence on every copy of Blue Monday it was sold.
That's ridiculous. That is just ridiculous. I'm more in Paul's camp with that. I would be definitely like going, whoa. If the tune's that good, I'm going to make some coinage off it, definitely. No way, man. Can't make a loss off that.
Paul comes in and says, Kev, you're a punk, I'm hip-hop. Well, that's it. If I ever get my book out this year, it's going to have a Blue Monday vibe about it. I'll probably end up losing money on it. The way it's gone anyway. I'll probably end up losing money. I'll end up buying them all myself or something like that.
No, I'll buy them all, mate. I'll buy them all. You know it.
Right. The official album charts that we can, if I can get my laptop to work. The number one album was The Massacre by 50 Cent. Never heard it. I've never listened to The Massacre by 50 Cent.
Sounds like a massacre.
Aye. At number 2, there's a band called G4. I thought that was a security company. I didn't. It came G4. It looks like 4 guys who were operatic guys. At number 5, the Scissor Sisters are there with the Scissor Sisters. Number 7, Hopes and Fears by Keane. Never a Keane fan. But I'm going to go to number 22. At number 22 is The Ultimate Collection by the Pogues. As soon as I saw this, I went, I can't let this week go by and we can't talk about the Pogues.
That's a superb choice, mate.
Because they've been mentioned a couple of times in the comments and all of that. I'm just going to have a wee go at David John, who comes on and he's going, Kent will tear us apart. He hasn't tore us apart yet, mate, so hopefully the sniper gets you very, very soon.
Kent will tear us apart.
Kent will tear us apart. I mean, they can't even...
It wasn't even sound good. It was just leave good tunes to us.
Aye.
You know what I mean?
So, the ultimate Pogues. We're talking about punk. Let's talk about Celtic Punk. And it's got this album's got 22 classic punk hits, Celtic punk hits. And when you have a look at the songs, every one of them brings back a memory, and it all seems to be linked with great Celtic days or nights. It's got Fiesta on it, which was played at Celtic Park all the time. I remember Sunday afternoons in the Newmarket for anybody. It's for Stirling Way, they'll all remember the Newmarket, and that's where I used to drink when I drunk. And the Pogues would always go on, and the Pogues were the first band that I realised that punk wasn't a style of music or a fashion. It was an attitude, because the Pogues were a punk band. When you see pictures of Shane MacGowan in 1976 at the Clash concerts and all of that, Spider was in a band called, I think it was the Millwall Chainsaws. He was in a punk band called the Millwall Chainsaws with Spider Stacey. You're talking about a band who were going about in early 80s London playing Irish rebel songs to a London audience, and we all know how the Irish were treated in London, especially in the 80s at the peak of the IRA's campaign. So you're going, this band had an attitude to start off when they went on tour with the Clash, and so they were well into that what you would call the normal punk community. But when you look at the 22 songs on this collection, there's political songs, there's danceable songs. They could make you cry, like somebody in the comments mentioned "Thousands Are Sailing." What a song "Thousands Are Sailing" is about the famine. It's Shane MacGowan's a certifiable genius. No argument with me. But when you look at what's on this ultimate collection, you've got Fairy Tale of New York. Everybody kens about Fairy Tale of New York as well. I mean, it's great. If I Should Fall from the Grace of God, Misty Morn and Albert Bridge, Body an American. Every one of them's a classic. Every one of them's a classic song. A Pair of Brown Eyes. Come on. Shane MacGowan, for me, there should be statues of Shane MacGowan for being the ultimate rock and roll guy. But I reckon that he's not talked about in the same sort of style as Keith Richards, because he doesn't look like Keith Richards. He looks like Shane MacGowan. All Shane MacGowan has actually got is his talent. Sheer talent. He's a poet and one of the greatest songwriters ever that Britain Islands has ever produced. But you'll never see him on the front of a T-shirt. You'll never see Primark coming out with a Pogues T-shirt like they done with the Ramones T-shirt or anything like that. But for me, the Pogues should be seen the same as the Ramones and all that, because they took Irish folk music, and I'm using the Neil Lennon air quotes here, Irish folk music to a wider audience. And we spoke about it before we came on. Look at the video for A Rainy Night in Soho. Look at Shane MacGowan in that video with the big shades and all of that on it. If you can see anybody that looks more rock and roll in the world than what Shane MacGowan looks in that video, I've yet to see it. But Shane MacGowan...
I'm trying my best.
But you need to get the mirror shades on, mate. You need the mirror shades on. But Shane MacGowan gets this, like, for me, this bad press. No bad press, but he doesn't get the respect he deserves because of how he looks, of the whole mess of... That's not a mess. It's a chaotic lifestyle that he's actually lived, where he should be getting... There should be actually getting, like, statues of Shane MacGowan in places for me.
I think as well, I mean, I listened to the album last night. It turns out you know half the songs. I mean, there's some songs I've got to be honest and admit that I didn't know as well as I probably should know. But again, what should you know? I don't really subscribe to that anyway, but I loved it, right? And, the song you mentioned there, Rainy Night in Soho, generally, it was annoyingly like the first song I heard, but I played it again today and I felt the exact same way again, if that makes sense. And because I was like, was that just because it was the first bit of the album I listened to last night? Do you know what I mean? And then I've just kind of, do you know what I mean? I've just went in autopilot or something like that. But I was really trying for the first song. I played it again today and I felt the exact same. I felt like I was falling in love, Kev. That's the honest truth. That's the best way I can describe it. And I can get slagged for that all you want, but luckily I don't care.
No.
I felt like I was like, that is the best way to describe it. I feel like I'm like listening to something and like he's taking me somewhere. Do you know what I mean? And then at the end when he says the song's nearly over and then he sings about, you know, you're the measure of my dreams, the measure of my dreams. Just think, it's just a fantastic lyric. I know it might not sound much, I suppose, in this context, the way I'm saying it, but listen to the song and then basically, you know, you're the measure of my dreams, saying to someone, that is what everything you build your dreams up to be, you actually, it turns out, are that. You are the measure of my dreams. I just thought, what an amazing, as you say, great songwriting and stuff. What an amazing way to put it, Kev. I really took to that song in particular. I mean, you know, you're talking about the ones you've heard around the stadium. I mean, my era will always be, you know, like that, like when the boys at the back. I used to love that. Do you know what I mean? That takes me back to my first ever Celtic game. Do you know what I mean? But I think you talk about being regarded as a rock star. I think sometimes as well, people think of Shane MacGowan as not as a singer. You know, just as this sort of rough sort of, do you know what I mean? Like voice that's coming over. Folk forget the music. It's about delivery. And it's how you connect, Kev.
They think folks see him too much as a parody.
Oh, definitely. That's a great point. I think that is one half of it. I then do believe people that aren't thinking deeper when they listen to it are just hearing a voice that they're going, it's no Charlotte Church, you know what I mean? It's not Will Young's like, do you know what I mean? It's not all the octaves, but it's about delivery and it's about connection. And that is two things, that album I listened to, Kev, you've got to take your hat off to him and go, he connects when he's saying something. And when he means something a wee bit more, the wee bit more oomph he puts in it, boom, it registers, it pulls at your heartstrings and it makes something in your brain tick. I would compare it, if I'm being completely honest, to Johnny Cash's last album, his vocals on that as a similar sort of vibe I get.
Yes, I'm having that.
Aye, do you know what I mean? I think of the two vocals, they like, because Johnny Cash, you know, obviously Hurt's the most famous one, but there's Hung My Head and stuff, and he can't be exactly variant between octaves here, but when you need that bit where you go, right, that means something big, that's a heavy moment, they know how to deliver. And also I feel there's something, the connection side is something that it's relatable. It's singing in a voice that we all feel, even though we couldn't do it half as good, but you already feel like you could do. And having that relatableness is a brilliant thing, because it means when you're then singing along with the song, it's connecting again now with you even more, because you feel like you're doing it just like him, even though you're not. And I just wanted to get that point across. I think vocals are so important in a song, but there's so many more reasons than just sheer technical ability. And I thought he really encapsulates that. And as I say, I've got to say again, Rainy Night in Soho is now, that's a song for me, 100%, man.
I mean, you mentioned Johnny Cash there. I don't think you can ever watch the Hurt video that Johnny Cash does his foot actually welling up, because it's a powerful video. I mean, you have a look. Somebody mentioned, the comments keep on flying up, so if I miss one, I keep it in my head. Somebody mentioned the Turkish Song of the Damned live by the Pogues. And I remember watching a Pogues video when you used to have videos in the early 80s. I think it was live for the Town and Country Club. And it was just chaos, and the audience was bouncing about the place, and it was utter madness. Eh? And you've got Shane MacGowan up there delivering passionate, intelligent vocals, but folk are just seeing this guy standing up there with a cigarette, no front teeth, holding onto the microphone stand. Strange, funny thing is about the Turkish Song of the Damned It's actually named after a song by The Damned, the punk band The Damned.
Yeah.
Have you ever listened to The Damned?
Mm-hmm.
Machine Gun Etiquette is the album you've got to listen to by The Damned. Fantastic album that is. And the Damned have got an album called... the Damned have got a song called The Turkey Song. And Turkish Song of the Damned is actually... They came up with it on the tour bus in America. Aye, they came up with it. It sounds nothing like... It sounds nothing like it, but that's how they got the title, The Turkish Song of the Damned. That's how they got it. Cool. For me, I mean, there's plenty of like Pogues greatest hit albums in that, but I think you've run Sodomy Lash, and the album that I really fell in love with the Pogues, the Centenary Season album, was I Should Fall From the Grace of God. And I can still listen to that album today, and it's still genius. And it takes me back to 1988, takes me back to the sunny days, takes me back to the Centenary Season. And I mean, if somebody would have actually says to me that the Pope, like, you'll get into Irish folk music by guys with a bunch of punks, and you go, aye, right, then they show you the Pogues, and you go like that. What? How out the box thinking is that? Instead of being a post-punk band, we're going to do fast versions of Irish rebel songs and write our own Irish classics in an Irish folk setting. That takes balls, that takes vision, and that takes a genius, which is Spider Stacey and Shane MacGowan.
I think that's total fair, and you know, I think you're right. I think the style of music is maybe something that you could think, I'm not really into that. That's really not my bag. And then, as I say, you know, you're listening to it. I'm listening to it last night, and I'll be honest to you, I kind of skipped to the ones I knew.
That's fine.
Because they are where they are.
You're off that playlist generation. I'm an album man. Know what I mean?
I was, but as I've said to you as well, I mean, like the jukebox was a big influence on me because it did take me to a million different tracks I would never ever have played either. Do you know what I mean? I don't know what I would have been if I didn't have that. I would have been not an album man, I know a playlist man. Kev, I don't know. I wouldn't be on this show anyway.
Hey, but, and the thing is, you were making money for the jukebox as well. Folk were educating you by putting money in the jukebox, playing all these songs.
I'm like, listen, I'm loving this musical journey, man. Go stick another £1 in there and keep me on this wonderful journey. But I found that you know the actual style of the music became really irrelevant very, very quickly. Listen to that Pogues album last night.
Mm-hmm.
The style of music wasn't really what was getting me. It was this soulfulness, singing songs that I was connecting with, and obviously the music is a style of music, but it's good. It's not rubbish. I think you need to removing the labels from a lot of music is a difficult thing for people to do. I think you get that a lot with rap and things like that as well. You know, people just have if that's in funnily enough 50 Cent pigeonhole. You know, for a lot of people, oh no, didn't listen to that. Whereas you gave us a great education 5 weeks ago about the multitudes of levels of what rap actually entails. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I know. Well, Russell, we've been on for 1 hour, 32 minutes and 35 seconds.
It's not bad for us, man.
I know. I think we'll leave it there, and we hopefully we'll be back on Monday. Hopefully, we'll be back on Monday, and we'll be back next Tuesday night for another Screamacelica. So, from myself and Russell, see you all later, lads.